This is the new Audi A5 Sportback, and you can think of it as a 5-door version of the A5 Coupe or a sleeker hatchback version of the Audi A4 Saloon. Either way, it's hard not to see this as a more practical yet stylish version of the A4, what with this sloping roofline and a full tailgate. Now let's just raise this up, shall we? Electric, of course, and in terms of outright boot volume, the A5 Sportback is identical to the A4, but with this lifting tailgate, it's a lot easier to load large items in. Speaking of which, let's do our suitcase test. Here's the large one, and that fits in very easily. A very small lip to load large items over, which is very good. And the medium-sized one and the small one, and you can see that there is a lot of space in here, and of course you can always make it a little bit larger with the split folding rear seats, and when you folded them down you've got a completely flat loading area. Now let's just pop these seats back up again, 1, 2, and hop in. Now, obviously, the main reason why you'd buy a Sportback over the A5 Coupe is to carry rear seat passengers, and consequently, the Sportback is a little bit longer than the Coupe, and that really benefits space back here because there's quite a lot of it, actually. Now, that seat is set up in my driving position. I'm just over 5'10", and look at the amount of knee room I've got. It's really very good. Headroom is okay for me. If you're a little bit over 6 foot, you're going to struggle a little bit, but you can slot your feet underneath the seat in front of you, and then you can slouch and there's more headroom. We've got an armrest here with a cubby, but it is worth mentioning that this is a strict 4-seater. Even though there is a lap belt here, you're really not going to want to carry a middle seat passenger because there just isn't simply enough room. Look at this big hump in the floor, and they're going to be struggling for shoulder room. Up front, and it's identical to the A5 Coupe and the A4 Saloon, but that really isn't a bad thing because the quality in here is exceptional. Everything has a really quality, well-made feeling. Now, some would say the design in here is a little austere. I think it's lovely, very minimalist, and everything is where you'd expect it to be. The Audi's MMI system is beautifully intuitive to use, and in terms of options, the only two I think are worth speccing are the technology package, and that's £1,100. And among the options that you get for that is this upgraded 8.3-inch screen here, which comes with 4G and Google Earth. And I'd also go for the virtual cockpit. Now, it replaces the dials with a TFT screen, and it only costs £250 on the A5 Sportback. In terms of cubbies, well, you've got a little space under here with your charging ports, a couple of cup holders, and whilst the door bins don't pass the Carbuyer big bottle test, the glove box most certainly swallows up a 1.5 litre bottle of water. These are the only options we'd go for because the A5 Sportback comes in 3 well-equipped trim levels. Entry-level SE gets alloys, xenon lights, front and rear parking sensors, cruise control and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Our range-topping S-Line car gets racier styling, 19-inch alloys and sports suspension, LED headlights and sweeping rear indicators. There's also a racy S5 that gets its own exterior and interior styling. Under the bonnet is all pretty straightforward, so there's a 2-litre turbo petrol with 187 bhp or 248 bhp, or there's a 3-litre diesel with 215 bhp. Meanwhile, the S5 gets a 3-litre V6 turbo petrol engine with an 8-speed automatic gearbox. This is the 2-litre diesel, and most people will opt for this engine, especially if they're company car drivers, thanks to this engine's low CO2 figure of 112 grams per kilometre. But even if you're a private buyer, this engine will suit you because it's a really nice diesel engine. There's lots of mid-range punch, and it never gets that noisy. You can have this engine and most others apart from the S5 with a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed automatic. Audi produces some good manuals, but I'd be tempted to go for this auto. It's a little hesitant at low speeds for the most part, it just slips through gears seamlessly. And this engine is rather economical, we returned around 51 mpg. The A5 Sportback is not just a great cruiser. Get it on the right road and it will really reward you with direct and accurate steering and a chassis that feels really well set up. Now you can have front-wheel drive or quattro all-wheel drive, and the quattro versions really come into their own when the conditions get very slippery. But really, in normal everyday driving, you'll struggle to tell the differences, even though the quattro's power split is more rear biased. It's a good all-rounder on the road, is the A5 Sportback, pleasant and relaxing to drive, and the Quattro versions offer safe and predictable handling. But the A5 isn't a smile-a-minute kind of car. If that's what you're after, then you'll have to look at the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe. But that's not this car's biggest problem. That honour falls to the ride. Apart from the 2-litre TDI Ultra models, all other SE and Sports versions come as standard with Comfort Dynamic suspension. That's normal suspension to you and me. But the S-Line and the aforementioned 2-litre TDI Ultra cars come with Sports suspension. The problem is that it's just too hard. This S-Line car just bangs and crashes into all sorts of holes. Now my recommendation would be to ask your dealer to remove the Sports suspension and fit the Comfort Dynamic suspension, the standard setup, because then you get the best of both worlds. You get the sporty looks and you get a comfortable ride. Now you could always go for the adaptive dampers. Now they cost between £600 and £900, and then you have the choice of ultra comfortable suspension or rock hard suspension, which of course is more suitable for country roads. And lastly, you do pay for those good looks. While it is more practical with that hatchback than an Audi A4, the A5 Sportback is around £3,000 more expensive than the A4. And when you realise that, it is a little difficult to work out why. But the A5 Sportback is still a desirable car, especially if you want a car that has 5 doors but is also sleek and gorgeous to look at. Now if you like this video, make sure you press our logo to subscribe to our channel or watch our review of the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, and don't forget to watch our playlist of the best saloon cars.